Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Cryptids and Monsters of the Week video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's do another entry here. This one just based on a random page suggestion. And this one having to do with a pretty interesting one in the sense that it has to do with a real life animal, one that actually existed on this earth. And it has to do with something that was there up until around maybe the 17th century or so in Madagascar. So I was debating about whether doing this one or not because a lot of times, cryptids are more than the lines of could they have existed, did they exist, very few sightings, that kind of stuff. In this case, though, this was a real life animal. It existed, it just simply happened to die out thereafter, but tales of its existence still happen to go around the world. In this case, they are in Madagascar. So, sure enough, let's go ahead and let's share the information here. And it has to do with this. It's known, or was known, as the largest bird of its time, in this case known as the Aepyornis. I hope I'm saying that correctly, but at least that's how it's spelled. But for lack of a better term, I'm going to go ahead and call it a more local term, which is the elephant bird. So let's go ahead and let's talk about all the information associated with this cryptid that existed a little bit back then, but could still be existing to this day. So what was this elephant bird? Well, again, you have to go back to Madagascar, at least thousands of years back until about the 17th century, as its last known entry point. This was a bird that lived there, and it was a large flightless bird. For all intents and purposes, it was almost like a larger ostrich, which you're looking at, a drawing of here. This was something that was huge, just absolutely humongous, at least 10 feet tall in some cases, and then others maybe slightly even taller, but its weight was definitely massive. This was something that ranged anywhere from 500 up to 800, and in some cases over 1,000 pounds with regards to this gigantic creature. This was an animal that looked like an ostrich, except for the fact that its legs were more thicker. It obviously had some very powerful legs. It would have been something amazing to see this thing, let's say, running around. The power that it had within those legs would have been gigantic. Not to mention, of course, those claws that it has right there on the bottom of its legs, too. Also impressive about this creature happened to be the fact of its eggs. Its eggs were equally ginormous. So this was a creature who laid eggs that ranged somewhere up to a couple of, like, say, 6-7 inches up to a more massive 13 inches or so, and they each weighed up to about 20 something pounds each single egg. Can you believe that? I mean, look at your average chicken egg and then compare it to this, and you'll see the huge difference when it comes to the size. Ironically, though, these eggs may have been its downfall in terms of its extinction, which I'll highlight here in a few minutes. But yes, this was a creature that was found there in Madagascar for the longest time. In fact, again, this was a known creature. This was something that people actually saw. Not just the locals, the natives that lived there, but also lots of European travelers that were there too. There was a governor of France, if I'm not mistaken, that was there traveling around, and he was able to hear these descriptions. I think he might have even seen some back in the 1600s. Then there was Marco Polo himself, who apparently traveled during that time period too, that eastern location during the late 13th century, and then also heard about descriptions of these elephant birds. What was much more prominent, though, was seeing the eggs. This was because this elephant bird was something that was very keen on being isolated. It knew that humans were a danger to it, and more on that just a little bit. But yes, it knew they were a danger, and so it found these isolated pockets to have its eggs and to grow and its family thereafter. That's why it was quite rare to see these creatures, even in their prime, throughout certain parts of Madagascar. Instead, you are much more likely to see the eggs or the remnants of the eggs when they were born. Obviously, like the shell casings, the eggshell casings thereafter. But here's where things took a little bit of a different turn in terms of its existence. So there's two sides when it comes to what led it to its extinction. There's one side which is less believable, which less people believe, happens to be that humans directly causes its extinction by hunting these birds. So there's that theory. The problem, though, is that a lot of evidence of the bones associated with these elephant birds do not point to them like showcasing the markings of being hunted, like the impacts of arrows, the impacts of knives, whatever was used in terms of hunting. No, instead, in this case, it seems like they were more on the lines of being, I guess, not worshipped, but considered almost taboo or sacred to hunt these animals. So whatever was happening there in Madagascar with the local natives, they, for the most part, did not have anything to do with hunting these creatures. In fact, it was a testament to why they lasted so long, especially since their early beginnings up until about the 17th century. It was a testament that's why they lasted so long, because they were not being hunted. So what in turn led to their extinction? That's the question that most people have. If they're not being hunted, then what did lead to his extinction? Well, there's this other part. It tracks back actually to those eggs. Remember, I was mentioning that they were found in great abundance, especially the casings, the shell casings that people would see. Well, a lot of those casings were actually found in remnants of villages, in places consisting of fires, those that are built by humans, in other places of just any part of human civilization. It seems like while these local natives, whoever was living there in Madagascar, did not, in this case, hunt these elephant birds in person, they did actively take these eggs from the elephant birds themselves, because they would use them to eat them, to cook them, whatever they did in terms of eating them. And then that in turn led to the slow but sure extinction of these flightless birds. Kind of weird, isn't it? I mean, here you have something where they're not directly causing the extinction, not like, let's say, the bison, which was probably the most famous animal here in the U.S., led to the extinction by hunting. No, in this case, it actually led from a population slowdown to the point where it was just pretty much there were not enough births happening from these elephant birds to continue the population thereafter. So kind of a sad but tragic way to go when it comes to these elephant birds. It's almost like a slow death, if you will. Another thing that caused their extinction is also tied to humans, but has to do for more, I guess if you could call it, for lack of a better word, farming animals. Apparently, humans, when they brought over and they moved over to certain parts there in Madagascar, they brought over like chickens and other birds that they would eat. These animals would in turn have these diseases that would come from them and be transferred over to these elephant birds. And these were diseases that these elephant birds probably never encountered ever before, but here they were, all of a sudden being sick from them. So their bodies must have not been, let's say, built or had some kind of immune system to protect them from these diseases, not like the ones that, like the chickens, would already have. And so that also caused their extinction too. What a way to go as well too. They're battling several fronts. In this case, low birth rates, and then also fighting diseases that they're foreign to, that all of a sudden they're introduced to by humans. And then if you wanted to go again back to the third reason, and that's having to do with some of them being hunted, you can just tell that was just probably the final nail in the coffin. The last known sightings of these birds, again, go to about the 17th century or so, and that's it. But still, to this day, there may be these animals that are still out there in Madagascar. Again, they are known to be very, very aware of humans in terms of their locations, and so they tend to be far away from them, try to be as isolated as possible, try to stay as hidden as possible too, to ensure that they do not come in contact with humans. But who knows, every now and then tales of these flightless birds still continue up to this very day. So these gigantic elephant birds, if you happen to be there in Madagascar and you see one in the far distance, you might just be seeing a living relic from a bygone era. But yes, pretty fascinating stuff when you think about it. Anybody there from, in this case, the Madagascar area? Anybody travel to that far off location? If you have, and if you happen to see or hear tales of these birds, these gigantic elephant birds, please post those comments below. It would have been something to see, like, why they were not more protective of, in this case, those eggs. Maybe, of course, the humans were hunting not the birds, not the elephant birds, but for the eggs themselves, and they had weapons, the spears, whatever they had. Maybe that was keeping them at bay. But you would think that a thing like this, in this case weighing in some cases over 1,000 pounds, it would definitely offer some resistance. I mean, you look today at like an ostrich, people stay away from those things for good reason. except of course the ones you see at the zoo, but still, I mean, these are dangerous animals. So imagine something like this, much larger, with those very dangerous talons associated on its feet. You would think that it would have a good chance of protecting its eggs, but who knows? Maybe instinct comes into play. Maybe it realizes it'll just instead of fight or flight, it'll just, in this case, run off, and maybe it'll have a chance later on to get more eggs, to build more eggs, or create some thereafter. But that's pretty much it. That's all the info associated with these creatures, these elephant birds, again known as the Aepyornis. So if anybody has any more info, anything else I might have missed, please post those comments below. It'd be fascinating too that eventually Marco Polo himself apparently came across this gigantic creature too. So all right, everybody, thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.